Hello and welcome to the Bitcoinlens episode 19. Hopefully you all had a great week this week. Obviously a super exciting week in Bitcoin and crypto this week, but without that being said, let's jump right into it because there's really some big stuff I wanted to go over here today. So first of all, some of the big players this week, just looking at MicroStrategy. So they really had a trade boom this week. I think it was November 21st, they were actually the most traded stock in the US. So beating Tesla, Nvidia, Meta, you name it. They beat everything that day. And I think there was one day, it was Wednesday, it jumped roughly $50 to $60 in one day there. So it was pretty crazy. It jumped to 540 almost in one trading day there. It recovered back a little bit now. It's back to 421, but still pretty impressive stuff there to see MicroStrategy kick that high in one single day and pretty much beating the rest of the competition. You look at, some may say like, okay, well, cool, that's one day. You look at MicroStrategy for the last year, they're actually 711% up this year. Compare that to Nvidia. Nvidia is 197%. We all know while Nvidia has been doing, that's pretty much the most held stock right now in the US probably. And it's only 197% the last year up, and that's Nvidia. So really crushing pretty much everything. We've gone over that, how it's been crushing the S&P 500. Hell, it's even been outperforming Bitcoin itself. So that's pretty impressive. Now, November 17th, this week, MicroStrategy actually acquired an additional 51,780 Bitcoin, valued at $4.6 billion. So that was about $88,000 per Bitcoin. As you know, the price really shot up here in the last couple of weeks. Pretty crazy price move, and I really couldn't keep up with it. And just to go back to MicroStrategy, some of that yield there was they made quarter to date, they've made 20.4% a profit there on that Bitcoin, and year to date they've made about 41% profit on that Bitcoin. Now, as of November 17th, they now hold 331,200 Bitcoin, and that is valued at about roughly, depending on what day you look at, roughly about $16.5 billion. Average Bitcoin price they've acquired at roughly about $49,000 per Bitcoin. Now, I did see an interesting interview too this week, which is kind of cool. But Michael Saylor went on MSNBC, and he said, he made the estimate of raising $42 billion to buy Bitcoin in 3 years, and he says he's way ahead. So he's already bought 66% of next year's $10 billion target that he's trying to hit with MicroStrategy, and that's in just 10 days. So just super eye-opening. This guy, he's sticking with these guns. MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, they're kind of famous for losing $4 billion in their stock price or market cap in one single day. This was years ago, like I believe it was 2019 or something. But pretty crazy to see MicroStrategy really soaring like this, and pretty much just beating everything out. Now, one of the other big players, BlackRock. Saw some news with BlackRock this week. Dennis Porter he's the CEO of Satoshi Act Fund. He said that BlackRock is now endorsing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So we obviously know BlackRock is an absolute leviathan in the stock market and financial services, and also just in Bitcoin ETFs. They're leading the Bitcoin ETF pack globally and in the U.S. But they're now going to have an in-house strategic Bitcoin reserve as well. And keep in mind, this is an $11 trillion animal, assets under management. So pretty big player here, now also going to adopt strategic Bitcoin reserve. Of course, like I said on the last week's episode, this is the most most performant ETF in the history of all ETFs, especially specifically this IBIT one, since it's been around a little bit longer, but it's pretty crazy. Now, this week, if you haven't noticed, if you haven't followed the news too closely, you probably saw that options trading also went live. So it went live on IBIT this week. Now, options trading obviously allows you to do some calls and puts and do a little bit more, kind of trading there, and a little bit more volatile, a little bit more risky. But I would definitely say this is going to cause massive inflows of capital. You just saw the price movement once they announced it. Price really shot up there a lot. And if you're wondering where you could do this, you could actually find any kind of common brokerage like E-Trade, Robinhood. Those are some of the most common ones. But yeah, all the other ones should also have it now for IBIT, all the recognized brokerages. So big news there from MicroStrategy and BlackRock. Just to kind of cap off the corporate game theory that's kicking in here, like I've been predicting, and it's really ramping up right now. We know the micro just this week. We know MicroStrategy bought the 51,000 plus Bitcoin this week. We saw Mara, which is their digital assets and mining company. They announced 700 million convertibles to acquire more Bitcoin. So some convertible shares there. We saw Semler Scientific raise 21 million at the market and acquired an additional 215 Bitcoin. Not familiar with Semler Scientific? They are a tech solutions company for kind of the healthcare industry. And then Metaplanet in Japan, they issued a 1.75 billion debt offering to buy more Bitcoin. So the corporate game theory is really kicking in heavy. I've mentioned each of these companies in previous episodes where they've started acquiring, but they're ramping it up, and it's really gonna start ramping up, and it's gonna become viral and really infect the whole corporate America and the rest of the world. This chase for more Bitcoin and strategic Bitcoin reserves. So super exciting there. Moving away from the corporate world a little bit and more into back into the federal government, it looked like reading this week looked like Donald Trump said he's going to hire a specific crypto role this week. So he wants to create a very unique first time crypto role, and this is per Bloomberg. So we'll see how that looks. If I had to put all my money out and guess who it's going to be, I'd probably say it's going to be Cynthia Lummis, and she's kind of been the brainchild behind the Bitcoin Act Fund and all the different Bitcoin acts and the different Bitcoin proposals that Trump has actually echoed. So Cynthia Lummis has really been the mastermind behind some of this stuff. So I would put money on that she would probably be that person if this goes through. I also saw in relation to that Donald Trump actually met privately with Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, and so he's going to be a little bit of an advisor there. So we'll see how that ends up. It may be someone completely off the private market, just grabbing someone off the street there in the private market and turn them into this position. Obviously, looking at Trump's admin, that wouldn't be too uncommon, right? I mean, half the admin is pretty much off the street right now. So we'll see what happens there. But I saw an interesting stat this week and wanted to share it here. Is the total transaction value in 2023. So for the whole of 2023, Bitcoin's transaction value was, compared to Visa and MasterCard, pretty astonishing. You look at MasterCard, their total transaction value for 2023 was $9 trillion. Look at Visa, it was $14 trillion. So most of you may think, oh, maybe Bitcoin was a couple of trillion. Try $36 trillion was their 2023 transaction value, which is pretty insane. And 2024, it's even higher. Obviously, we're not in the end of 2024, so we'll see those stats by the end of this year. But it's already far exceeding Visa and Mastercard. Moving on to Texas, a little bit stateside. I know we had some good news on Pennsylvania last week, but Texas, actually, some good news out of Texas. So you look at the CEO, Dennis Porter of Satoshi Act Fund. He's been talking to Texas lawmakers about conversations about strategic Bitcoin reserves. So on November 21st, North American Blockchain Summit in Texas, which was covered by Cointelegraph, Dennis Porter said the group had spoken with a lawmaker who's just started conversations to introduce the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve in Texas. For those not super familiar and wondering kind of why is it a big deal that Texas specifically is adopting a Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, this is the 8th largest economy in the world. So this is not compared to other provinces or states. This is the 8th largest economy in the world. Compared to any country. So unbelievable there. And this is super bullish for Bitcoin. If you're a Bitcoin holder, once again, like I always say, a lot of the news I'm saying is out of the US. Obviously, a lot of stuff in the Middle East, Asia, all these places, Africa. but it impacts everyone, right? This kind of news, it's used for everyone. It's going to really spike the price when this thing goes live, and some of these bigger states and bigger economies adopt strategic Bitcoin reserves. So Dennis Porter really doing some great work there for the Bitcoin community. He presented in front of front of the Texas lawmakers this week, and I wouldn't be surprised early next year, right? If I had to put money on it, I would say I predicted somewhere closely aligned with Trump. Maybe try and front run Trump a little bit once he can officially announce it. Because I mean, he's still president elect, right? He's not president yet. So once he starts rolling out the strategic Bitcoin reserves and all these things, I think you're gonna just a little bit before you're gonna start seeing some of these folks front run them and maybe announce it in early January. I predict major front running with corporations, banks, educational institutions, countries. I really predict a lot of front running going to happen there before Trump gets his hand on the president ticket there. So, more positive is Satoshi Act Fund news. Dennis Porter once again announced this week he can confirm that he's been speaking to members of Congress and Parliament in two different nation states about also implementing strategic Bitcoin reserves. So one is in Europe and one is in Latin America. So this is really some big stuff there. So Dennis Porter really doing some insanely good work for the Bitcoin community there, not just on the state side, but now he's orange pilling countries in Europe and Latin America. So pretty special work there from him. Now back to Cynthia Lummis to talking about the bill that she actually the strategic Bitcoin reserve bill by Lummis. I saw this week it was the fourth most viewed bill in the entire country, the Bitcoin Act. So unbelievable stuff there. The fourth most viewed. It was kind of an interesting fact I saw this week, but I thought that was pretty crazy. Bitcoin really trending right now, even for the non-tech folks, non-Bitcoiners, non-digital currency folks. It's really, really trending. So some great news. Moving a little bit to the countryside, the nation state and the different countryside here is China. So a Chinese court said that Bitcoin and crypto are property. They ruled that this week, and holding them is legal. So this was a Shanghai court, and they officially ruled Bitcoin and crypto ownership is legal under Chinese law. And this was reported by the South China Morning Post. So super insane news there out of China. And why is this big for me? Me just following crypto now for a long while and Bitcoin for a long time now. You look at the flip flopping that's going on here, guys. I mean, this is some major flip flopping we're seeing right now. You look at 2009, China prohibited all crypto. So all crypto prohibited in 2009. Obviously, this was that was pretty soon after Bitcoin got released. But then you look all the way to 2013, and the Chinese banks, they cracked down on crypto and said you weren't allowed to engage with or trade with any kind of crypto or Bitcoin. Then in 2014, you looked at Alibaba and Baidu. They were banning Bitcoin transactions and all mining equipment sales. 2017, you saw the massive, this was the big one really that I'll never forget, is the government shutdown of all Bitcoin exchanges. And then even as recent as 2021, China banned offshore crypto accounts. And this was really their big fight against capital flight out of China and out of the mainland, trying to prevent that. And now you look at news like this and saying crypto and Bitcoin are legal and you can hold them. And mining is ramping up there. And more rumors of more mining being legalized there. So it's unbelievable. And, a place like China, they've probably been one of the strictest countries when I look back historically over the last decade and a half, and it seems like they're 100% on the train right now. And like I said last week, right after the Trump announcement, they're fully on board, and it sounds like they're not going anywhere now. Just to kind of give you an idea, just some of the tallies of Bitcoin right now. So the U.S. still kind of leads that tally with 215,000 approximate Bitcoins. China's got about 190,000. UK about 61,000, and then El Salvador up to now, I'd say is the only real Bitcoin country out of those leaders there. But they've been stacking one every day, and they're right almost up to 6,000 Bitcoin now. So still way behind US, China, and UK. But keep in mind, some of these countries with the largest holdings, that's mostly seizures from like e-crime activity and things like that. Just a side note, I spoke earlier this year about the German government selling 50,000 Bitcoin that they basically seized from criminal activity and then sold it immediately. So they sold it in July at 55,000 a Bitcoin. Had they held on to that, they would have now had $2.35 billion in profit. So if you're German, this is the part where you close your ears. But I thought that was pretty crazy, and really this was really eye opening to see how much profit they lost out on by selling that. I also saw this week in Poland, the Polish presidential candidate Sławomir Mencen. He came out and said he owns 33.7 Bitcoin. So that's about worth just about 3 million, depending on when you look this week, but about $3 million worth of Bitcoin there. So pretty insane there. And it looks like we got another potential presidential Bitcoiner on our hands, joining Nayib Bukele and co. So he did already say, like, if he wins, he vowed to follow Donald Trump's lead and create a strategic Bitcoin reserve if he wins the election. So if you're from Poland, this is super exciting, super promising there for this specific candidate. I also saw this week Andrew Tate came out and said he will match Michael Saylor. So Andrew Tate, he's super controversial, of course, but this was pretty cool. He said he will match any Bitcoin that Michael Saylor buys, and $1 million. Just be specific, $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Every time Saylor buys a million, he'll buy a million. He'll match it. So that's pretty cool. Really cool stuff there. And all these little stories, some of them may seem minute by themselves, but they just keep adding up, and every week they just keep adding up. So it's really promising. Finally, just some interesting stuff. I thought this was a little bit more significant because this is a legendary hedge fund manager, Paul Tudor Jones. He just came out this week and he reported he owns $160 million in Bitcoin ETFs. And to me, seeing a legend like this, hedge fund legend like this just tells me what's coming next. Billionaires are coming next. Billionaires are coming for Bitcoin. So billionaires have kind of been sitting on the sidelines right now. But when they see stuff like this, they've been orange pilled kind of in the shadows up until now. But when they see public stuff coming out like this, and they see the price movement where it is almost touching 100K this week, I guess we'll have to wait for next week to reach 100K. But this is unbelievable news from such a astute person, especially in the hedge fund world. So yeah, game theory activated on the corporate, country, hedge fund, billionaire, you name it, pretty much every parallel. Hopefully that was pretty insightful, guys. That's all I have for this week. I'll talk to you all next week, and have a great week. Hopefully we see 100K this week. Awesome. Have a good one. Bye-bye.